Dan has been a pastor and evangelist for 49 years. He grew up in a missionary family in Thailand and he pastored in Oregon, Illinois, and California in the United States of America. Pastor Dan is blissfully married to Hilda, a retired librarian, and have two adult sons, Alex and Eric. For the past 25 years, he has also been speaking to large rallies in Asia. Currently, Pastor Dan is a president of a non-profit, Raise Force, which does evangelism and helps build churches and schools. Our speaker is a global evangelist from Quiet Hour Ministries, Pastor Don Smith.
Out of heaven saying, behold the tabernacle of God is with men. He shall dwell with them, they shall be his people, and Almighty God will be with them. He shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, and no more pain. The former things of old pass away. He that sat upon the throne said, behold, I made all things new. Words, for they are faithful and true, and it is God
Did you like that? Alpha and Omega. Great, great, great song. Welcome to all of you. Happy Sabbath. Happy to have all of you in front. There's a lot of people in the back. Welcome to the camp meeting, to the Congress. I've chosen a bad day to have a problem with my voice. I hope I can get through it and make it clear to you and make it to the end. Because it's a Sabbath, we don't want to sell any books. So I'm just going to find a way to just give away these books. We have 500 of these in the back. If you would like one, you come and meet people at the front. They will give them to you, one per family, until they're gone. Little book called Who is God? I have a little parable for you. Okay. Many years ago, I was in school. I was walking across the campus, and I saw the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. And when she passed me, she smiled at me. And then one day, I was sitting in the cafeteria, and she sat down at my same table. And she asked me my name. I got her name. And we started talking. So easy to talk to her. Just magical girl. She's a Christian. She's smart. She's gorgeous. I said, any chance I could take you out to the concert on Saturday night? Sure, sure. She was magic. She was so much fun. She was crazy. After 3 months, I finally got the courage to hold hands with her. Then the first kiss on a beach in California. It turns out her family was really rich. She took me to their house, huge house, big pool. She drove a red Corvette. So one day I went to see her father and asked if it would be okay if I would marry their daughter. And they said yes. She planned a spectacular wedding. It's going to be at a fancy hotel down on the beach. It's going to be fantastic. I planned a honeymoon in Tahiti, one of those cabins out over the ocean. I imagined what it would be like. It's going to be so perfect. A honeymoon, making love, and being with this beautiful girl for the rest of my life. The most beautiful girl in the world. The day of the wedding came. And I'm standing in the front. Everybody is there. And she and her father begin to walk down the aisle. Just amazing. I'm 5 minutes away from being married to this beautiful girl. When all of a sudden, another girl walks in the back. And sat down. I had dated her in high school years ago, but I liked her, but she broke up with me. But boy, she's incredible now. I'm standing here at the front of the church and I can't take my eyes off of her. I said, this is no good. She saw me looking at her and our eyes met. And she made this little gesture. It's supposed to be you and me. And that's all it took. And I said to the girl of my dreams, I'm so sorry. And I walked out the door. I walked away. I walked away from her. I walked away from our house. I walked away from that perfect honeymoon. I walked away from the best girl in the world. I walked out and I got in a car with her and drove away. Left everybody sitting there. It didn't last. It was crazy. I was 5 minutes away of being with this girl, and I walked away. Just a parable. There's an old movie called Out of Africa. Meryl Streep and Robert Redford. They're in Africa. She owns a big ranch. He is a pilot. They love each other, but they're different. He is always flying away. He's always saying, come away, fly with me, let's go all over Africa. She is saying, why do you always have to leave? Finally, he leaves. He flies away. She lets him go. You want to shout at him, how can you leave? It's Meryl Streep. And you want to shout at her, go, let it go, 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 go. It's Robert Redford. But she lets him go. And he flies away and he has a plane crash. And it's too bad. There are famous athletes who walk away when they're young. They could make hundreds of millions of more dollars. And they walk away. Not worth it anymore. They want to do something else. Julia Roberts in the movie Runaway Bride. She walked down the aisle 3 times, ready to be married, and ran away every time, walked away. And when I was young, our church went through a crisis, and I thought about walking away. A lot of my friends walked away. Church leaders walked away. Australia lost 1/3 of their pastors. And I thought about leaving and walking away from the church. But then I remembered my family. This is my family's story. It starts in Norway, where I'm going next week, but it came to America. They bought an Adventist book, they put it on a shelf, forgot all about it. And there was a fire. They were on a prairie and their house was surrounded by a fire. But there was a spring. I have been to the spring. So they took their family and went out to the spring. And they got blankets and they got the blankets wet and they got under the blankets and hoped that the fire would go all around and they would stay safe. The neighbors came. All the neighbors were around this little spring. And they wet the blankets, trying to stay safe. My great-grandparents. But in the middle of all that, the spring ran out of water. And my great-grandfather came to the blanket, got underneath, and he said to my great-grandmother, unless God does a miracle, we're going to die right here. And she said, I cannot believe that God will let us die like this in a fire. They were pregnant with my grandfather. And under that blanket, that couple prayed to God and they said, God, if you will save us from this fire, we will read the book. And he went back to the spring and the spring was full of water. Thank you, God. That's my family story. When the fire ran out, they read the book. He began to keep the Sabbath. They met some Adventists, got baptized. My whole life is different. And when I looked at that, 100-some years in the church, we've been all over the world. My brothers and I were all pastors, my father, grandfather. How can I walk away? How could I walk away after 100 years of this? And I decided to stay. I was a senior pastor of a college church. Larry Garrity was the president of the university. And he and I were talking about maybe just leaving. I said, I don't know if I can stay. And he said to me, Dan, you have to stay. If you and I go, then those people, they will make the church the way they want to make it. They will make it in that direction that you and I are not comfortable. We have to stay. We have to stay and fight to make the church what we think it ought to be. Dan, we can't leave. And I decided to stay. I'm still here. Once in a while, I have what I call Starbucks moments. I was preaching like this at AUP up by Manila. At the end of the week, the two students that had invited me, they said to me, Pastor Dan, we're out. We're just out. We can't stand it in the church anymore. The church is never going to change. We're going to go out. They were fighting over music department and the Bible department. The kids just wanted a little change, just simple songs. Music department wouldn't allow. This is, years ago. I said, don't leave. Meet me at Starbucks tonight. Starbucks had just come to Cavite. And we sat in a restaurant at 10 o'clock Saturday night. I had to fly out in the morning. It's like we're in a great controversy with Satan over these two kids. Wonderful, smart kids. And I fought for them. I said, we can't lose you. We can't lose you to the church. We need people like you. Please don't leave. Jesus died for people like you. Please stay with the church. Don't walk away. Please don't walk away. I am happy. Last time I came to the youth congress, he was here. I didn't know what had happened to him. He's working for the SSD division now. His name is Tony Stanier. He's married, he's got 2 kids. He did our crusade in Cavite. He stayed with the church. He's helping fight to make the church better. I had dinner with him. I've had many of these moments. I was a college pastor and people would come to me and say, Pastor Dan, I can't take it. I don't want to stay in the church anymore. I say, meet me at Starbucks. I don't drink coffee. Never had a cup of coffee in my life. But I take people to Starbucks so we can talk about God and the church. Some have stayed, some have walked away. These are my 2 sons. We had the issue over women ordination. I'm not fighting for that. That's not my point tonight. But my sons don't believe that it's okay to discriminate against women or anybody for something that they have no choice. A woman has no choice of being a woman. Why should she be discriminated against? So when we had the big vote, my sons were watching. I was there. I'm sitting in the bleachers. And everybody voted. And we lost by 200 votes. We're still going to have men in charge of everything. I called my sons. I said, guys, please don't leave. Please don't leave over this. I know it's hard. I know it's frustrating. But stay with it. We'll fight and we'll pray. There's another day. Someday, women will be equal with men. Please don't leave. They're the most precious thing in my life. I don't want to do heaven and eternity without my sons. So please don't go. Please stay with the church. So far they're staying. I'm happy. Maybe tonight some of you have that kind of a moment. I can't take you all to Starbucks. But maybe you have had some moments where you just, why can't the church handle these things better? Maybe you're thinking of walking away. Maybe it doesn't really matter. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you're here, it means you're going to stay. And I just want to talk to you about that. Church is not perfect. We know that. But I'm begging you, please don't leave. We need you. We need the young people. I'm 70 years old. I will be done one of these days. We have to have you be the church. And you will decide what the church will be. Not the union, not the division. You will decide what the church will be. And someday the church is going to be what it ought to be. Someday we're going to be tired of being dead or average or lukewarm. Someday we're going to be on fire. Someday we're going to quit arguing over the music. Someday we're going to quit arguing over stupid things. Someday we're going to get it right. Help us get the church right. I'm begging you. Some of you were thinking of joining the church. We're going to give you a chance tonight. Come up here and say, I want to join this church. It's the best. It's not perfect, but it's the best. We're asking you to join. Help us. Help us. Help us make this church what it ought to be. And I decided 40 years ago, when my friends were leaving right and left, as long as they didn't drive me out, I was going to stay. They give me a pulpit, I get to preach, I get to lift up Jesus, I get to try to help make the church what it ought to be. I'm going to stay. Look what God has done in my life. I know sometimes the church can drive you absolutely crazy. I have scars all over me for stuff that's happened in the church. I've had wars over music and the carpet and all kinds, the sound system. You should have seen the battle we had over putting screens in the church. Oh, terrible battle. Now they've been there 25 years. I was in Baguio. Conference president told, mission president said, we have one church, there's a lady, she stands in the back, she thinks she's like Ellen White. People walk in, they don't have a t-shirt or they're not dressed very nice. She said, you can't come in. You go home until you get dressed better. If they have an earring or necklace, you go home. She has driven that church from 120 down to 20. Too bad. There's a lot of Filipino churches in America. You know why there are so many? Because there will be a church and there will be two families and they fight over who gets what job, whatever. So one family goes and makes another one. One Filipino church and a Tongan church tried to get together. They couldn't do it. Tried to have one big church. They couldn't do it. Fighting all the time. Had to separate again. My church, couple kids, had a baby, not married. Someone tried to tell them, you can't come to church. You can't come to church now. You made a big sin. Maybe the church seems boring and lifeless. Maybe in your church the music isn't very good or the message is boring, whatever it is. And you're tempted to say, I don't think Pastor Dan, I can make it. This is your Starbucks moment tonight. I'm going to fight for you because we need you in the church. Please, please, please don't walk away. Help us. Help us. I have probably had 1,000 people over the years say to me, Pastor Dan, I love Jesus. I'm okay with Jesus. But I'm not okay with the church. I don't need organized religion. I had dinner with 3 of my friends last week. We've done many mission trips together. None of them are going to church now. They said, we can do God at home. We don't need to have church. Don't need the church to be saved. I just want to stand here and tell you that I believe it is Jesus' church. Jesus says, I will build my church. It's his church. The church people reject is Jesus' church. How can you have Jesus but not his church? It's Jesus' church. This series is on Jesus. It's all about Jesus. I think if you're going to want to go to heaven, you're going to have to be part of a church. It's everywhere in Revelation. There's a group of people standing on the Sea of Glass. They're not alone. There's no one alone in Revelation. They're always in a group like a church. Standing on the Sea of Glass. standing around the throne of God. There's no place in Revelation you're by yourself. No one is going to go to heaven one by one by one. You're going to be in a group. I don't care what size, what kind of building. You're going to be in a church. The Bible says Jesus is the head of the church. The church is the body. You can't have the head without the body. You can't have Jesus without the church. You have to do it together. Crazy illustration. I've been using this for years. When Hilda and I were dating, our second date, we went out to a restaurant, a couple hours. Let's just say we're sitting there. I'm just looking at her face. She's so beautiful to me. All of a sudden, she talks. She says something to me, and I say, no, please don't talk. I just want to look at your face. After a while, she puts her hand on my hand. I said, no, please don't touch me. I just want to look at your face. She would say, something's wrong. You cannot pick and choose. You cannot say, I want your face, but not your mind, or your hands, or your heart. If you get one, you get all of it. And if you want Jesus as the head, then you also have to have the body. You get both of them together. If you love one part, you have to love it all. You love Jesus, you love the church. You have to have Jesus, you have to have both. Now I'm going to tell you why I have stayed with the church. My own reason, here they go. I have stayed with the church because Jesus stays with the church. Jesus knows the problems of the church. He knows all the problems better than you and me. He knows every problem. He knows where every church is dead. He knows where there's been politics. Jesus knows. But where is Jesus? He's still in the middle of the candlesticks. He sees it all, but he doesn't leave. How can I leave if Jesus doesn't leave? Jesus is right there. I'm a follower of Jesus. If he stays, then I stay. I have hundreds and thousands of friends. They come up to my room and they knock on the door. I was racing to get this done tonight. Here came Cora. I have been in her house. I have done her father's funeral. I have baptized their kids. I know this lady. I love her. She's now in General Santos. She lives in Baguio too sometimes. I have our friends in the back room here. I have friends all over this building. Ben Borja is here this weekend. Been my friend for 25 years. Helped him get into ministry. Came up and hugged me yesterday. My friends are from the church. That's where they come from. I got off the plane in Manila. There are my friends, ready to hug me. We go out to dinner. Hold on to the church. Just because there's some crazy people that do some crazy things, there are still fantastic, wonderful, giving, saintly, godly, righteous people in the church, and they're my friends, and I have hundreds and thousands of them. They give meaning to my life. They make my life richer. I am better off for all the friends I have in the church. Amen? I hope that you have found that to be true. I see you walking in groups. I have taken, I'm sure, 2,000 pictures this week. Can I take a photo with you, Pastor Dan? And it's a group. It's church. That's the church. I wish I could get a picture. I left a spot here, but I think the picture didn't come in time. I have a lady that's from the Philippines, lives in America now, Sharon. She goes with us and she sings. I wish I could show you the video that she made for my 70th birthday. I met her when she was 19 years old. Great singer. We've done crusades in Legazpi and Santa Cruz and Lipa, all over the world, and Thailand and all over. She was in Cavite she's coming to Manila this year. And she made a video of all those places that we have done together, 25 years. I love this lady. It's from the church, my friends. It's from the church. When I turned 70 years old, my wife handed me 2 notebooks. While I was in the Philippines for a month, she called everybody and emailed them. She said, please send a message for Pastor Dan's birthday. People wrote pages to me, stack of cards. I cried all the way through it. These people that are in my life, it's all because of the church. Whenever you have a problem with the church and you want to think, well, maybe I got out. Don't leave out what the church does good. The church gives you a fantastic group of people, and we're going to do 1,000 years. We're going to walk in the gates of heaven. Oh, you made it. Oh, you're here too. Good. We're going to do 1,000 years together. Daniel Palomares, union president, translated for me in September every night. I got here, he hugs me. He's my friend now. Johnster here, Renz, all these people, Charm, these are our friends. We do ministry together. These singers are our friends. Don't forget that. Don't forget. I ask you, when there's a disaster around the world, who goes? Who goes to that? When there's Haiti, no water and no tents and no food, who goes? It's not atheists that go. It's not Hindus that go. It's not Buddhists that go. It's not Islam that goes. It's Christians who go. It's the church. Every time. Who gives the most money? Church, Christians. That's who goes. Those are the people passing out the food. We put a whole boatload of stuff down there, and rice and food and all that. Whenever you're looking at the church, you can decide if it's half full or half empty. And you see the problem. Don't forget what the church does right. Who starts the hospitals around the world? Church. Who builds Mountain View College? I read the book. Who drove the bulldozer all the way up here? Dug out all the roads here, put a dam up here so you would have electricity, so you have a college, 2,500 students every year for the last 70 years, whatever it is. The year I was born when they started. That's the church. Who makes all the hospitals? Who made the schools that you guys go to? Church. It's church. All by yourself. You can go to someone's house, give them a little bit of food. Maybe you can do something nice for them, cut their grass. But you cannot take a boatload of food to somewhere. You cannot do that without a church. It takes a group of people to do all that. When Tacloban had the typhoon, I had a Filipino group in my church. We were one of the biggest donors. We gave money to Tacloban. We sent water and tents and food to Iloilo, and we built a school and a church in Palawan, all destroyed by the typhoon. You can't do that by yourself. It takes a church to be able to do those things. Power of the church. The church is where you talk about the big things. The church is where you stand up here and someone talks about big stuff. Sabbath school, lectures, sexuality we had today. Pastor Jemsley, wonderful talk about sexuality. Really good. Proud of him. You want to talk about little stuff, you can go to the barber shop. Go to the beauty parlor. Talk about weather. Talk about sports, talk about nothing, little trivial things. You want to talk about big things, you got to go to a church. What does it mean to be human? Where do we come from? Where are we going to go? What is right or wrong? That happens in a church where we talk about big things, important things, everlasting things. Well, friend of mine wrote an article one time. He said, what can you do when you're a little bit mad at the church? If you're unhappy, what can you do? Well, you could stay and pretend. You could just sit here and just say, I don't want to leave because my parents will be hurt, and I'll just sit here, but my mind is 1,000 miles away. Okay. Or you could go out the back door. Don't tell anybody. Just sneak out the back. Or you could go out the front door. You can just say, I'm out. I don't agree with this church. I don't agree with what's happening. And walk out the front door. Or he said you could do number 4. You could pick and choose. If there's some part of the church you don't agree with or you don't like, you don't have to throw out the whole church. Take out that one part. But come to me, Pastor Dan, I'm mad about it. I don't want to pay tithe. Don't pay tithe. That's between you and God. But enjoy the rest of church. Why would you leave over that? Okay. Number 5, you can stay and fight to make it better. That's what I chose. I wasn't always happy with the church. There were things I didn't agree with, but I loved the great majority of it. And I decided at 30, 32 years old, I looked at all of it. I said, I'm going to stay. As long as they don't kick me out and let me preach and let me stay here, I have a voice. I am going to stay with the church, not going to walk away. God has blessed me in the church. I love the church. I love you guys. Jesus stays with the church. I am going to stay with the church. It's Jesus' church. I'm a follower of Jesus. So I'm here to fight. And if you need a Starbucks moment, I just want to say to you, to stay and fight. Go back to your church and fight. Do what you can to make it better. Don't just walk away and just say, I can't deal with it. Help us fight. And someday we're going to get it right. Someday the church is going to be filled with amazing music every week. Someday people are going to be loving. Someday there'll be no more politics. Someday. I'm going to fight for that. Yes, sometimes people walk away. In Noah's Ark, people walked away. A rich young ruler decided, not worth it. He walked away. Don't want to do it. Didn't want to sell everything. 10 lepers, 1 came back to Jesus, 9 walked away. Some church people brought a lady to Jesus. They had caught her in adultery. They brought her there. Jesus begins to write their sins in the sand, and they all went away. There's always people leaving, but can I make this point clear, my friends? If you reject the church, you will end up walking away from Jesus. If you just say, I can't deal with it. Those Pharisees walked away from Jesus. They went away from the Noah's Ark. They lost a chance to be saved. The 9 lepers were not with Jesus anymore. If you end up saying, I am going to try to do it by myself at home, you will eventually walk away from Jesus. Be careful. And so he says in the book of Hebrews, we are not part of the group that shrinks back in the last days. We are the faithful ones. And so I'm choosing on Friday night of this week to say to thousands of you that are here, stay with the church. We need you. Don't let anything drive you away. No politics. Pastor doesn't remember your name. The music's too loud. The music's too soft. It doesn't have the right beat. It has too much drums. Whatever it is, don't walk away. Help us get church right. It says we are not the ones who shrink back. We are going to stay. We're going to stay. Help us. There's a famous movie a long time ago called Apollo 13. And there, 3 astronauts are going to the moon. But there was an explosion. And now there's a problem, and they're not sure they're going to make it back to the earth. And everyone's all like panic. What are we going to do? Those guys are going to die. And one person said, this is going to be the greatest disaster in history. Oh, one guy got a little excited. He said, I beg to differ with you, my friend. This is not going to be the greatest disaster in history. This is going to be our finest hour. They were trying to get it all fixed. There came the moment they had to wait for 3 minutes of silence. They couldn't hear anything. They didn't know if those guys were going to live or die or already dead. The wives and the children are sitting there waiting to hear if their father was still alive. And then all of a sudden, there were 3 parachutes in the sky. All of a sudden, the radio began to go. Everyone is cheering. They brought them back alive. They made it. It was not a disaster. It was their finest hour. Someday, I believe we're going to have that. Someday our churches are going to be full. Someday we're going to lift up Jesus every day. Someday it's going to be wonderful, gospel, great, powerful music that just lifts your soul every week in church. Someday there's going to be only love. There's not going to be any bickering, no fighting over stupid things. Someday it's going to be our finest hour, the church. Don't miss it. Don't leave before that happens. Someday. Can I just say to you very specifically, when you go back to your church next week, do something. Do something to make the church better. We've been having a music seminar. We said, go back and make a praise team. Go to your pastor and say, can we put a little praise team together? Make the church great. You can't find a piano player, we'll find a way to record Sergio and we'll send it out. We'll give it to Jemsley and you can go to the website and you download music and you play it in your church. Plug in your phone to the sound system and make music. If no one's greeting at the door, you greet at the door. If no one sweeps the floor, you sweep the floor. If no one makes the flowers, you put the flowers there. No one brings food to the potluck, you do it. If some kids get baptized and next week they're not in church, you call them and say, hey, we want you here. Central in Cagayan, I've talked to people. We baptized a lot of kids that said, how these kids, they play basketball every Sunday. There's one man that organizes a basketball game every Sunday and baptizes them all. You can do that. Do something. Have kids over to your house. Do something. Make your church alive and make it great for the glory of God. Stay with the church. I'll give you one last story. There was a young man reading a book that he bought in New York City, World War II. It was a used book, and there was the name of a girl and an address. He wrote a letter to the girl, and she wrote back. They began to fall in love. He's out on the battlefield in an island in the ocean. Finally, after they're falling in love, he says, can you send me a picture? No, don't want to send you a picture. Leave it like it is. Finally, he's coming back from the end of the war. He's going to be in New York City. He writes her and says, can you come from Florida to see me in New York? Yeah, okay. He says, how will I know which one is you? She says, I'll be the one with a red rose. Famous story. He goes to the train station and there's 1,000 people coming off the train. And he is looking for the red rose. All of a sudden, he sees the red rose. Little old lady. No wonder she didn't want to send him a picture. How did he fall in love with a little old lady? But he's nice to her. Did you have a nice trip? Do you want to go out to dinner? And all of a sudden, she hands him the rose and says, that lady there gave me $1 to give you the rose. And out from behind a pillar walked the girl that he thought he had fallen in love with. It was all a test. It was all a test. The young lady wanted to say, you know, you love me when I am young and I'm beautiful and pretty. But when I change, if I get old, will you change? Or will you be loyal to me no matter what? She wanted to know. The rose was the symbol to say, I will never leave. I will never change. Are you willing to say to God tonight and to me, to yourself, I will stay, Pastor Dan. Even though my church might not be perfect, even the whole Adventist church may not be perfect, it is the best there is. It has the best picture of God. It has the best package of truth. There's no place better. I will stay, Pastor Dan. If you come back next time for the Youth Congress, even if you're not preaching, you're just out there somewhere, I will be here. I will be faithful to the church. I will let nothing take me away. The Sabbath is like that. Church, I'm loyal. I'm going to stay. And we just say to the world, we will never change. I'm going to tell you what I believe today before I'm wrapping this up. When I was a young pastor in my late 20s and early 30s, I had to make a choice. Was I in this church because it was in my family for 100 years? Was I going to be in this church because my family are pastors? That's who we are. That's what we do. It's all I know. Or was I in here because of my choice? And I had to go belief by belief by belief. What am I? What do I believe about God? What do I believe about Jesus and the Bible and gospel, Sabbath and commandments and all of it? Line by line, I had to decide. And then I had to do a crusade, my first crusade. And I had to get a sermon ready every day. What am I going to say that I believe? And I hammered it out. I hammered it out what I believe today. What I believe in a crusade, when I preach it, that's what I believe. It's what I will die for. No one pays me now to do this. It's what I believe. I am proud to be an Adventist pastor. I am proud to be in this church. There's no other church that has this picture of God. We are the only church in the world that doesn't believe that God burns people in hell every day. We're the only ones. We're the only ones that believes all 10 commandments and baptizes under the water and believes in health and has missionaries all over the world. We led the world in tithe and giving for many, many, many years. We have missions and schools and clinics everywhere. I am proud of our church. Not perfect, but it's the best there is. I have told hundreds of people, you don't want to join my church, go find a better church. If you find a better church, you come back and get me, and I'll go with you. And no one's done it. They've all stayed and got baptized. I invite you to stay tonight. I will stay with the church. Amen? I've said it as strongly as I know how to say it. I know you're jammed in here. I know it's hot for you. But it's Friday night. It's my last week here. I got one more tomorrow morning. Would you be willing to stand and say to me and to God, I will stay with the church. I will not walk away. Nothing can drive me out. Nothing can offend me that I will walk away. I will stay. Amen.